Welcome to The Holistic Nurse with your host, Peggy Smith. Peggy will introduce and educate her viewers about the differences between alternative, holistic, and complementary medical therapies. Her goal is to empower the lay medical consumer to learn how to advocate for themselves. So now, please welcome the host of The Holistic Nurse, Peggy Smith.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of The Holistic Nurse. I'm Peggy Smith, and today, as a sequel to our show last week, in case you missed it, we had Dr. Andrea Niestas from California who shared with us a whole resource full of 5 to 15-minute hacks for self-care. Today, we're going to be talking something very deeply personal and powerful, how the holistic practices can support self-care, self-love, and ultimately help you create a healthier lifestyle.
Mhm.
But we're not just going to be talking about theory. We're actually going to be talking to someone with lived experience.
Mhm.
My guest today is not a clinician. He's not a guru, but he's a real person who's walked through physical and mental health challenges, and he's found healing by integrating healthy choices in his life. And he's going to share with us, how he did that and, what it's done for him. Uh, Thank you for coming today, Matthew. I'd like to introduce you. This is Matthew Benedon from Philadelphia. And thank you for joining us. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, ditto. Thank you for having me on. I'm very grateful.
So, when people talk about self care, they think about spa days, candles, bubble baths. Um, what was self care like for you, and when you were struggling the hardest? How did you relate to the concept of self care?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Self-care. So I think most of our lives, people are programmed and conditioned to repress ourselves. I do feel that fear is at the root of most, if not all, of physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health challenges. And I think that um, society programs us to believe that we need to be a certain way, that who we are is not um, is not acceptable or appropriate for society. And so, for most of my life, what I've learned was that I have been repressing myself. And so, I think to answer your question, self care for me was learning to love myself, learning to um, express myself with faith and with confidence and with love. And I think that's one of the most important things. But I also think that self-care is it's a complex thing because the mind, the body, and the spirit are all connected. And so if you're having mental health challenges, working on your physical body, you know, giving your body rest, giving your body the proper nutrition that your body needs, herbs, making sure that the body has what it needs to thrive, to give your mental and emotional health as well as your spiritual health the best opportunity. And conversely, also working on your mental and emotional health can absolutely be excellent for your physical health as well. So again, just to quickly summarize, I think that self-care is self-love, is not in an arrogant, pretentious, conceited way, which is pride, which is an inversion of insecurity and fear, but self-love, which is to say, and this is what I think is at the foundation of all healing journeys and all self-care, is complete unconditional self-acceptance for everything that you are, everything that you've been through, everything that you're feeling. And I do think that that's the foundation of self-care, in my opinion.
Okay, the phrase "fake it till you make it." I think sometimes when you're facing some of the hardest challenges and you don't have excuse me, that belief level yet, you just have to keep one foot in front of the other and, hope the rest of your body and mind catches up. But
100.
it nobody's pretending that it's easy by any chance. And one of the and actually the doctor last week actually showed us, like in 2 minutes at a red light, you could do something to help tell your brain that you love your brain, and you're on the right track, and you can do this. You don't have to. But she also made a point to say, put it in your calendar. And she said, if I don't put my lunch break on my, at work, I'm going to forget that I need to eat lunch. And eating lunch, you'd think is something basic.
Right.
I can tell you, nurses will get the end of the shift and they say, "Oh, I don't think I peed today."
Right. Right.
There's some, and you wouldn't think that you would actually forget something like that. And a lot of people have the misconception that holistic means expensive. It's going to cost money.
Yeah.
Um, and some of the most basic things of self-care, like hydration,
Hmm.
uh, getting enough sleep and rest, like nobody's making you stay up on TikTok until 2 in the morning scrolling mindlessly, Uh,
Absolutely.
you
Yeah.
know, and the Harvard Medical School and other, institutions have said for years, you should turn off all electronics and blue light things about an hour to 2 hours before bedtime, just so your brain can shut down from all the impulses, electronic things and we don't realize what a toll it takes. More and more local schools here in Philadelphia, at least I'm sure elsewhere, they're actually teaching the high school kids how to turn off, or they're collecting the phones at the beginning of the class so that they can
One.
actually learn. And the kids are reporting back that, gosh, I'm less stressed when I'm not holding that phone, waiting for the beep that somebody I don't know that I have to read, just that moment.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
so that's, we talked about, limiting our news coverage, things like that to eliminate
Sure.
your stress.
Sure.
Um, but one of the blockages for that is most people don't think they're worthy of taking care of themselves. They think
Yeah.
they get their value in life comes from being a caregiver for someone else.
100.
If you're a
Yeah.
one-on-one caregiver for your grandmother and eventually, your grandmother goes on to the next world, you're left with a big void because you didn't take care of yourself all throughout the process and you don't even know who you are at this point. Grandma's not here for you to be grandma's caregiver. Um,
Yeah.
it's very common after being in a caregiving situation to go into a major clinical depression because you weren't prepared for that void.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
it's not the healthiest way. Um, where were you in life when you started looking for options? Since traditional ways must not have been, working for you. I'm
They
assuming.
no, they weren't. No. So where I was in life, so I was in the middle of a dark night of the soul. I was trying to find myself, and I what I realized in hindsight going through, because let me just give the audience a little bit of backstory about my journey. So back at the end of 2019, I started going through my own healing journey. As I mentioned to Peggy earlier, um, started with digestive issues, started brain fog, lethargy, fatigue, rashes, and it branched out from there. A lot of mental and emotional challenges, a lot of depression, anxiety, and what have you. So I at first, back at the tail end of 2019 into 2020, started merely tackling it physically. So I would try to take herbs and supplements, and I would fast, and I would do juice cleanses and things of that nature. And that was wonderful. It was very educational. I learned a lot. It humbled me a lot. It strengthened me a lot. It gave me a lot of wisdom. But in a lot of ways, I learned that it goes beyond the physical. It goes beyond the physical. And so the more that I dove into my own healing journey, the more that I learned that trauma as a child, repressed emotions, things of that nature, were having a very negative, detrimental effect on my physical health. And so when everything started happening, it's really hard to identify what triggered it. I know I was having some personal issues with my family, and I was just repressing a lot of emotions and what have you. So I know I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here, but I was just, again, like trying to find myself, who I was. And I think that probably was part of the catalyst for what put me into this healing journey. That doesn't really answer your question if you want to elaborate.
Well, no, but one thing that stands out there, the timeline that you're presenting, that was when COVID was starting, and
Correct.
a lot of people were home and isolated. And when you're home and isolated and you're not distracted by normal interpersonal relationships and things, your mind just tends to run wild. You think of all kinds of things, because you're there by yourself,
Yeah,
and that's a
yeah,
contributing factor for a lot of people. People that were in 12-step programs, it wasn't quite the same having your meetings online uh, when they were used to that physical contact and that, regular stimulation and exposure to other people in your same journey. Um,
sure.
so and I think one of the hardest things to learn is also how to be kind to yourself.
Yeah,
Um, I think there was a famous poet who had a lot of tragedy in his life, and towards the end of his life, his summation of what it was all about is he says, "Life goes on. You grow up anyway, no
yeah,
matter where you come from as a child. Once you're an adult, then you have power. You have to claim the power that may have been stolen from you as a child." To
yes,
actually take over and take care of yourself, be responsible for yourself. And
100%.
you know, s simple things, even if you don't feel like going to bed at a regular time,
Right.
if you're really a rebellious sort of, you know, uh, oppositional defiant type child, as an adult, trying to tell yourself you need to be in bed so you can get 6 to 8 hours sleep, reasonable.
Sure.
Um, Even though you're telling yourself that, all the baggage from the childhood is there in the back saying, "No one's gonna tell me when to go to bed." Uh
Yeah.
I grew up so I didn't have to eat vegetables type attitude,
Yeah. Very true.
Uh,
Very true. I think it comes down
so
to choice.
yeah, go ahead.
It choice, Peggy, you know?
Mm. It has to be a conscious choice, but sometimes we don't look for that. We don't realize it's an opportunity to make a choice until it looks like we've lost all our other choices,
Yeah, well,
and,
very
uh,
true.
you know. Um, so, do you exercise too in your thing? How do you cover?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think taking care of again the mind, body, and spirit simultaneously are very important. So exercise is a wonderful thing because again, what you do to the body is going to negatively or positively affect the mind. So absolutely, exercise is a huge part of it. Breathing is a huge part of it. Again, as you mentioned, hydration, proper sleep, proper nutrition, the correct thinking, the thoughts that we have, the feelings that we have. But yes, exercise is absolutely imperative, in my humble opinion, at the very least, because the body needs movement. So the mind, the body, and the spirit, they all need to be nourished, and they all are nourished in separate ways. And so the way that we nourish the body is through, of course, hydration is one of them, and through what we consume, what we eat, but also movement. The body needs movement because energy, and which is emotion, because emotion is energy in motion, it gets stuck in the body. And that's why there's a great book. I forget the author's name, but it's called The Body Keeps the Score. And it's about how trauma and energy get stored and stuck in the body. And one of the most wonderful ways of alleviating that trauma, that stuck energy, those emotions is through movement. Excuse me, is through movement. Now, that could be stretching, that could be cardio, that could be calisthenics, that could be lifting weights, but exercise is, in my humble opinion, instrumental to being the highest expression of who God created you to be, to being the man or woman that you were put on this earth to be. Because again, we need to take care of the body, the mind, and the spirit simultaneously. And if you're lacking on one, it's going to negatively affect the others. So, yes, exercise.
Yeah. The way the energy medicine field works is very often things that maybe took you decades to reach the low point or the complicated point in your life. Energy techniques and holistic methods can actually, in one session, even wipe away a lot of those blockages if you're open to that. Um,
100%.
did you find, since I mean we don't none of us live in a void, as you got healthier,
Mhm.
come back to that thought in a minute. We'll be right back after this break. Hold on.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease?
Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to easysense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's easysense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Holistic Nurse with Peggy Smith and my guest, Matthew Benedon. We're talking about how he's not a professional clinician, but he's sharing with us how his learning about techniques and incorporating holistic ideas into his journey in life has made him contributed to being a healthier person.
Mhm.
And we talked about, regulating sleep and hydration and movement, breathing and just emotional awareness. All
Right.
of these things regulate the nervous system. And the
Mhm.
nervous system, when it's calm, then if you're having cravings and food disorders, your cravings go away. Or, if you're trying to quit smoking, if your nervous system is calm, the cravings for the nicotine are reduced. And when you're not polluting your mind and body with all kinds of pollutions, whether it's a substance or sugar or whatever, then your mind, you have more of a mental clarity. You're able to see clearly.
Very
Um,
true.
Even scheduling time to be without your internet devices gives you
Mhm.
clarity because you realize that, wait a minute, I'm not trying to be like all these TikTok things that I'm looking at, and I'm not less of a person or not as you know, like I say sometimes nobody grew up in Leave It to Beaver's family. What we see on the screen is really not reality.
Very
Um,
true.
uh, so although my kids really wanted to have that car that talked, Michael or something on that one show, the Michael Knight show. I don't remember who it was, but
Knight Rider, right? Knight.
Knight Rider. Yes, okay, you were the right age for that show. So as you got healthier, did you notice that your relationship, the way people perceived you, changed, or are they so absorbed? A lot of times, people are so absorbed in their own uh, trials and struggles, they don't even notice what's going on around them.
Sure,
Did you?
absolutely. Well, the healing journey is very humbling. It's very humbling. So you become a different person. There's so much fruit that's a lot of people when they're going through the healing journey, when they're trying to heal, whether it be physical, mental, emotional, or what have you, it can be very challenging when you're in that darkness, when you're in that pit. But in truth, you are the caterpillar in the cocoon. And so when you come out of that healing journey, you are going to be a different person because for many reasons. I mean, there's a lot of humility that comes with it, so much wisdom, strength, character development. Your energy changes, the way that you view yourself changes. So absolutely, you become a different person. And in my humble opinion, in order to really successfully get through the healing journey and come out on the other side of the tunnel, it requires you to let go of the old version, the version of you that was identified with the sickness on a very unconscious level, the version of you that perhaps repressed yourself or was rooted in fear or had self-hate or what have you, or did not express yourself confidently or with love. And so it absolutely, in my humble opinion, requires you to let go of the older version of you in order to be reborn and made new and to be the best or at least better version of you. So, absolutely, when you go through that healing journey, people will look at you different. You will hold yourself differently. You will view yourself differently. At the very least, there will be humility. And with humility comes more presence and more centeredness and more love. And so, to answer your question, yes, absolutely. People will look at you differently, they'll view you differently. But really, you discover that how others look at you, it's irrelevant. The most important thing is how God views you and how you view yourself. And you're rooted in being rooted in love, and you're yourself unconditionally. So it doesn't matter how people view you, but yes, people will view you differently, and many people view you in a much better light.
Well, what struck me as you were talking is that you're presenting yourself what appears to be feels like a different person, but
Yeah,
what you're actually doing, I think, is getting in touch with who you really are, your essence. And
absolutely.
I think most people are, in their essence are good. We have the arguments about good and evil and things, and that's not for this show
Yeah,
today.
yeah.
But, when you there's an affirmation that crosses many of the different energy modalities. It's used in tapping. It's used in other forms, generations of that and similar type therapies. But basically, when you can say to yourself, I deeply and completely love and accept myself, and then
Mhm,
honor, respect myself.
mhm,
Uh, some people will be happy with that at that point and just finish with something positive like, I really love myself. I'm a beautiful person. But if
mhm.
it's struggling to reach that, you really don't believe that you're worth loving, um, you can add the final sentence, and I forgive myself for getting in the way of myself, and uh,
100%.
and that's part of taking responsibility for your own health, which is a good part of the premise of this whole series that we do, because it's not the doctor or therapist job to make you well. Uh,
Correct.
and nobody can do the actual work it takes to become healthy. Did you find that were you in touch with traditional practitioners, doctors or therapists during your rough time, or were you trying to do this all on your own?
No, absolutely. I initially started going to the traditional allopathic community and absolutely. And they were useful to an extent, but I do believe that there are a lot of things that the traditional allopathic community doesn't necessarily recognize. For example, like leaky gut, parasites, heavy metals, things of that nature. And if you go to
Right.
a functional doctor, they will absolutely recognize those things. So, yes, I definitely did go that route, and I'm grateful that I did. I'm grateful for every experience that I've had and for all the wisdom that every experience has brought into my life. Um, but yes, I went through the allopathic, and then eventually transitioned to more of a holistic, naturopathic um, way of a healing modality.
Well, we're fortunate here in Philadelphia that, we have university hospitals that are training new doctors to come out with the integrative medicine approach.
That's
They're
excellent.
beginning. Jefferson is, one of the leaders in our city for that. Um,
Phenomenal.
and what I heard too, we've talked about on other shows, gratitude, I think, is a big, big part of the healing process. Uh,
100%.
you
Absolutely. We need to wire our brains in gratitude. But I didn't mean to interrupt you, Peggy. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. No, and here in Philadelphia years ago, there's actually a professor at University of Penn who wrote a book, Marty Seligman, his name is, Authentic Happiness.
Mm,
And, uh, the book fascinated me. This was, like, maybe 20 years ago I read the book, but the whole premise of the book is no matter what point you are in life and how bad you feel your situation is, if you're able to list even 2 or 3 things every day for which you can be grateful, you realize that your life's not hopeless. And,
one-
the whole he actually has a course at University of Penn, or he did back then, teaching that whole thing. Well,
mm.
didn't have the
That's it.
time to look up, but it's, that was a really, it's a world famous book of Authentic Happiness, and,
I have to check
you
that
know
out, but I do. Go
when
ahead.
you don't feel like you're worthy of being happy or worthy of being healthy,
Yes.
maybe you've had a lot of bad habits and maybe you even grew up in a family, where everybody had bad habits because that's what they grew up in. Um, you can't be beating yourself up for what's gone on in the past. You just have to draw a line and say, I recognize, the need to change and this is what's motivating me to change, but it's not because I'm a bad person. I
100.
I didn't become an alcoholic because I'm a bad person. We'll be doing a show in the near future on generational trauma, and that's a little
Mhm,
bit about what you were alluding to. It's a real thing. There's a genetic component to most addictions.
mhm.
It's a certain part of your brain that if you had that gene, you just have to work harder. But it's always important to know that you're worth it, and it's you're not being punished for coming from a family with a lot of, issues in it, and
Yes.
everybody has issues. Uh, what do you do in the way of, or I'm assuming, I shouldn't assume, of breath work and everything?
Mm.
Have you ever done yoga? It's not as common for men, but a lot of more men are getting into yoga.
I have never done yoga. I've never done yoga, but I am a firm believer in the power of the breath and breath work. I do believe that, being rooted in order to be properly rooted in the present moment and properly rooted in your body, you have to you have to breathe and be conscious of your breathing. And I have often found on my own journey that if my nervous system felt dysregulated or if I felt anxious or out of the present moment or what have you, just focusing on my breath. There are really wonderful breathing protocols and exercises that you can look up that I would highly encourage the audience to do that. But even just simply following your breath, keeping the mind on the breath as it goes in through your nose and either out through your nose or out through your mouth. Personally, I like it when it comes out through my mouth. Just focusing on the breath, allowing taking a conscious breath will not only alleviate a lot of anxiety, but it will put you in the present moment. But I also would want to just very, very quickly touch base on what you were saying regarding forgiving yourself. I just really have an important point I'd like to make, which is that we're born into a very challenging world. And so, yes, we've all made choices as a result of a lot of the challenges and darkness that transpires in this world. And so we do need to forgive ourselves. Yes, we made those choices, but many of us made those choices that are because it was rooted in a lack of homeostasis within us, a lack of balance, feeling like we need to be someone in this society, um, having trauma, sometimes even in utero, because I do believe that when you're in utero, your mother's thoughts, words, feelings, emotions that she's having, as well as the food that she's putting in her body, is having a positive or negative effect on the baby. And so we're sometimes already born with a certain level, in my humble opinion, with trauma. And then we proceed through this world, which has a lot of darkness, also a lot of beauty and a lot of light and goodness. And we make choices as a result. So for example, just very quickly, and then I will allow you to continue, Peggy. I was bullied when I was a child, and that had a very negative effect on my well-being. And as a result of being bullied, I felt very insecure, and became a people pleaser, and I ended up doing a lot of things which I felt were not conducive to my physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health and to my well-being. And so, and then for a very long time, and even now to a degree, unconsciously in my subconscious, there is the need to forgive myself for the choices that I've made. But I realize that I made those choices as a result of trauma, as a result of things that happened when I was a child. So I think that forgiveness, forgiving yourself for what you did when you were not as conscious as you are now, in a world that tries to, condition you to be different than you are, in order to try to find peace within yourself, I think that we need to forgive ourselves, and I think that's one of the most important steps that we can take to healing and well-being. But Peggy, I took up
That's
enough of your
okay. And on that closing note, we're going to take another break. We'll be right back. Thank you.
Did you know that your beliefs thoughts create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating. Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us on The Holistic Nurse. Today, we're continuing the discussion on self-care and self-love. And when your life is chaotic, it helps to learn how to set boundaries, and boundaries are an important part of self-care. We didn't even touch on that yet. But also develop a routine, because when you were a child and somebody said you had to go to bed, an hour after dinner, after you brush your teeth and all that, sometimes you even resented it because somebody was, if you were opposition to fight, somebody's telling you what to do. But then when you realize, like I remember once being an adult, being in my own mess when I came home from work, looking around saying, well, gee, nobody cleaned up the house. And, oh, idiot, you live here by yourself. It's your job to clean the house. And that's kind of like the moment when you realize you turn into your parents. The first time, I'm saying something to a child that, oh my God, my mother said that, I'm turning into my mother.
Right.
Those are like key moments in growing up and reaching adulthood. But we all need structure. Our dogs and our cats need structure. When I get up in the morning, I have one dog. The other day, he actually not only ran to the bathroom before I got there, but grabbed the roll of toilet paper and handed it to me. He was like, "Thanks, Lucky." Kind of like, wow, we have too much structure here. But the animals learn, and there's comfort in the routine. Um,
100%.
my camera the other day, I said somebody was at my door. It was that same dog that gave me the toilet paper, looking at the window saying, like, time for dinner. Where are you?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but, we can joke about it, but there's so much comfort, when you have that structure and you don't have people telling you what to do as an adult, you have to create that structure. Uh,
100%.
I try to, whenever I can, get up about at least a half hour before I really have to be up, just so I have this fallacy, it'll be my time. It's not when you have 6 dogs. But, uh, to at least help me prepare for the day, check my calendar, decide, and so I'm not gonna be late. I have time to do whatever was on my list for me before, sometimes you get that private moment to yourself in the bathroom before you get the shower, or in the shower, can kind of clear your head and get your day started, and,
Yep.
um, or look at your calendar right before you go to bed at night so you know what to expect from yourself in the daytime when you wake
Mm-hmm.
up. You don't
Yep.
feel so scattered. But structure and routines really are important. It's not just something that grown-ups make kids do. And, grown-ups have been teaching kids to have structure, probably not even realizing it was only just something that their parents did. And so we're copying everybody, but we're not mindful and thinking about what the benefits are.
Sure.
When we look at some of the grandmom's old wives' tales, or old wives' concoctions and things like that, uh, and we laugh. And grandmom didn't know why she was passing this on generation to generation. But like my mother, for instance, no matter what ailed her, she drank warm water and lemon juice. As an adult, I realized that's actually a natural detox,
Hmm.
and it does help cleanse the system and clear
Yep.
impurities, which
Sure.
clog our bodies and mind.
Yep.
Do you do anything like meditating, or do you have any habits like that, or you've just been doing what felt right and got you to the goals that you were trying to reach?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely intuitively move forward on the healing journey. I used to meditate a lot, quite a bit. I haven't meditated in a while. I am an advocate of it. I do think that like a mindfulness meditation, which is I actually do basically I try to implement every day to a degree, which is observing our thoughts, not identifying with every thought that comes in. I think a big problem that many people have, including myself for a very long time, is identifying with the very negative limiting thoughts that pop into our mind. I'm not good enough. I'm not this. I can't do that. I'm afraid of this. And I think that a lot of people we see these thoughts, we identify with them, and then we judge them. And I think that's a huge mistake. I think that one thing that we absolutely need to do is we need to observe these thoughts that are going through our mind, and not identify with them, including and especially the very negative ones, and as well as not judging them. So a lot of times we'll have a thought that will say, I'm not worthy. And we'll go, oh, that's my thought. And then we'll think something negative about that. And so that is a form of meditation. So I absolutely advocate that. That can be considered mindfulness meditation, where someone just sits down, closes their eyes, and observes their thoughts and gives the mind permission to just run wild without judging the thoughts, without identifying with them. And what that really does is that gives you the soul or the observer, whatever you want to call it, it you become more identified with that. So you can flow through your day with a lot more ease and a lot more happiness and joy and flow and bliss because you're not weighed down by these negative thoughts that are reality, are not yours, they're not coming from. So I do advocate that.
Well, and a lot of these negative thoughts come from neuropeptides in our brain that
Mhm.
are keeping those negative thoughts, instead of just letting them fly by and releasing them when they get in the way. You don't let them stop and live in your brain. you know
Right.
um but it's some one of those things that, I mean, nobody said life is easy, and even the holistic habits aren't easy, but you always keep your eye on the end game, which is to be healthy.
Yep.
Um, I do not use allopathic doctors. Like you said, they had an important role in your journey. They
Hmm.
are very important. Research is, especially in a big city like we live in, but it is harder and harder for people to access some of the services that they could get easier in the past.
Sure.
So holistic techniques don't replace the traditional doctors. Certainly, if you have symptoms, a regular provider needs to know and follow up with traditional testing if that's what was required or suggested.
Hmm.
But to have if you can incorporate these things in your lifestyle, you might not need that primary doctor who's so hard to get hold of nowadays. Is
Sure.
often, you
Yep.
know, it's we have all the urgent cares around. It's certainly a better option for no doctor at all, and sometimes it's hard to get into but you
Hmm.
should have a physician, if whenever possible, that actually knows you over time, so they know whether something is serious or just part of your personality or
Right.
whatever. That's one of the big benefits of having that. It's safer medicine too. If a stranger is not always uh, and we know that one of the biggest causes of cancer and autoimmune disorders are stress.
Hmm.
Um,
Yep.
so we can't live without stress, but we can control how we react to our stress. And,
One.
that's what we want our goal to be.
Yep.
Um, and they say it takes 21 days to incorporate a new habit.
Hmm.
I wondered, like, who sat and watched for 28 days, and, are you better or worse at less if you don't get it done in 28 days? The rules are nice like that, but they're generalities. They're not, there's no Bible that says if you didn't stop smoking in 28 days, you're a total failure.
Right.
If you maybe you got distracted, maybe you weren't quite just ready yet to do that. Um, and we're all on a timeline that we don't control. I think the universe, whatever, your guide is in the universe, on your timeline, and you may not agree if it's not happening quick enough, but when you're ready, it happens. And I
Right.
think, uh, but it's also important, especially with the mental health challenges, to make sure that you're reaching out to a professional or a trusted family member that can get help if it's needed. Sometimes with the mental health challenges, you're too close to the situation to realize that you're in an unsafe situation.
Sure.
Um, and but if you can learn to accept yourself, the good and bad struggles and the high points, without judging, then and my mother used to say to me growing up, if you have to ask the question, you already know the answer.
Wow. Very insightful.
And a lot of holistic practitioners will say, ask inside. And when I
Yeah.
first heard that 20 some years ago, I thought, well, that's ridiculous. If I knew the answer, I wouldn't be paying you to tell me what I need to do. Well, no, the
Sure.
answer is usually within all of us. We know what we need, even if we don't like what we're being told.
I
Just
agree.
like if one parent told you no and you go to ask the other parent because you want a different answer, it's not going to solve the problem. And sometimes you don't have enough parents to get the answer you really want. They
Yeah.
might not be in tune to,
Yeah.
um, and it's we're challenged by social media. We're always judging because we feel like we're trying to measure up to what we see on the screen, and those
Sure.
screens are no different than watching Leave It to Beaver.
Yeah.
Nobody has that perfect family.
Correct.
Um, but what do you, well, I think part of holistic too, we've done shows on spirituality being a holistic modality. I've had certain cultures tell me, "Oh, I can't meditate. I don't know how to meditate." Well, and a
Hmm.
little Italian lady was telling me that once, and I said, "But every day you say the rosary, that's a form of meditation." And,
Indeed.
and then when she could relate to something like that, she's, "Oh, you're right. I guess it is. And I feel calmer when I say the rosary." It's
Sure.
not necessarily because of the rote prayers you're reciting, um,
Yeah.
but, and if you grew up in a structured religious home, um, and you got away, as most kids do when they get to college, and they can't wait till they don't have to go to church anymore, because everybody's going to church. You
Right.
realize that your life is missing something, not because of necessarily the church that you were going to as a child, but because of the structure of just taking that even hour or whatever, that morning off once a week, just to feel and be accepted. And
Sure.
um, so they're all different aspects of holistic care that are
Hmm.
important. But if you're really struggling with mental health issues, especially, I like to remind people that 988 is the suicide hotline. That seems to be the universal number, across our country. Um, and it's not just a call when you're ready to, do something drastic, but if you don't know where to get help, especially with the new insurance challenges and all, you can talk to somebody 24 hours a day who can get your details of your situation, and they can find resources that you can afford that are in your area that can help you.
Hmm.
And they're also trained to assess whether or not it's a critical emergency situation.
Right.
Um, so, uh, I know it is harder, especially with the new insurance rules, to get mental health services that people can afford. But there's always options. Sometimes it's your pastor or a teacher,
Hmm.
a close friend, even that is already ahead of you on the path of personal journey of getting healthy.
Sure.
Um, but just, if and usually if you're not sure whether you should call somebody for that kind of emergency, you're probably in that emergency. That's one my if you're wondering if I should, then the answer is yes to that. We're actually, I believe, getting ready to take one more break. and then we'll come back with a closing message of inspiration and positive to help everybody know that anybody can do this.
100%. Sounds
Okay,
good.
we'll be right back. Thanks.
Okay.
Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Welcome back to the Holistic Nurse, as we're talking about incorporating self-care and self-love. And, a lot of times it comes down to consistency. Things don't happen magically. There's no magic wand, but part of when you're learning to love yourself, you're learning to be patient and accept yourself. So it's okay if your timeline is different than what you think somebody else did it, and what you see perceive other people getting through different time goals that you're trying to reach. You don't really know how long they've been in that struggle, where they're at. It's important not to identify with whatever your diagnosis, your label is.
Absolutely.
We did a show a few months ago about you are not your diagnosis.
Mhm.
Um, and so, excuse me, I want to update my computer. So if you can remember that you're not your diagnosis, and you have control over the choices you make. And there's lots of help out there. You don't have to go through these journeys alone. Um, and these holistic techniques are not the only ones that are available. But Matthew, why don't you kind of give us a closure of what you've learned and offer us a positive message that you can do it, anybody can do it, and.
Abs- Absolutely. Everyone is capable of healing. Everyone is capable of being their best selves. We're all born with a purpose, and I guess let me actually first preface with, again, I do believe that self-love is at the root of all healing, and I believe it is a lack of self-love that is at the root of most, if not of all, illness and disease. And I do believe that we need to unconditionally love ourselves. And I do believe with my whole heart, and I'm sure the entire audience and most of the world would agree, that love will save the world, that love is the most powerful force in the universe. But we cannot give to another what we are not holding on the inside toward ourselves. Everything that we give to another, whether positive or negative, is a mere projection of what we're holding on the inside toward ourselves. And so I cannot give you unconditional love unless I first have unconditional love for myself. I cannot give you $10 if I only have $5 in my pocket. So I do believe that love will heal and love will save. And so we must, for love is the answer. But I cannot fully love you unless I love myself first. And this is why Jesus Christ even said that you must love your neighbor as yourself, because it all starts here. It all starts here within yourself. You have to love yourself before you can really truly love another. And part of self love is creating boundaries with respect and with love. It's It's saying yes when you want to say yes, or saying no when you want to say no. It's creating a boundary and having respect and love for yourself. Creating boundaries for yourself is one of the most imperative things that we can do to practice self-love and to heal and to be our best selves. So I guess the positive, uplifting message that I would like to leave everyone, and this is something that I have learned on my own journey, and I would love everyone to know, is that you are born for a reason. You are here to do something important. I truly believe with all of my heart, all of my being, all of my soul, and all of my spirit, that every single person is born with a purpose. And we're like, life is like a tapestry. It's like a beautiful jigsaw puzzle. And every piece is different, but every piece fits in perfectly. And every single person, everyone who's listening to this, everyone who's watching this is here to do something, to not only do something, but to do something very, very important, to do something that can literally and will literally change the world. You are unique. You have gifts and talents and skills and abilities that are unique to you that no one has ever had and that no one will ever have. And I think that the main thing is a, an awareness and a knowingness that I can heal, I will heal, I'll be my best self, I'm here for a purpose, and I will fulfill God's will for my life. And I just want to, and I will put a holistic spin on this. I just want to say, in my experience, because I did not, I had to go through my healing journey to come to this conclusion. But you were mentioning spirituality and how it's an important piece, and I agree. And for me, the whole of spirituality at the root of everything is Jesus Christ. And I just want to put a holistic spin on that because we did talk about that. I believe that fear is the opposite of love. That's why in the Bible it says perfect love cast out fear, is at the root of all illness and disease. It's fear and a lack of self-love, which go hand in hand. So a lot of times, if not most of the time, many people are trying to control their life. And they're because they're rooted in fear. They're very much up here, trying to plot, plan, organize, and control. How do I get out of this healing journey? How do I get this job? How do I get my improve my relationship? We're trying to control everything. So surrendering your life to a higher power, which in my humble opinion is Jesus Christ, is is imperative to healing. To surrender, surrender, surrender. That's one of the most important things. Surrendering what you're going through, let go of the fear, and loving yourself, taking care of yourself, and fulfilling your purpose on this earth. That is the best thing that you can do. And everyone can heal. Everyone has a purpose and a mission. Everyone is loved, and everyone has the ability to love and to be their best self. How's that?
Well, thank you for coming today. I do appreciate that. And then, I usually add too, we can learn so much from the animals, as I know from personal experience. If most of
100.
us, if the world would act like animals, I think we'd have a perfect world. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because they know how to treat each other with respect, and they know how to. I had an elderly dog. The other younger ones would step aside, let her eat first. But thank you for joining us, Matthew, and sharing your journey. We'll be back again next week, at the same time, 1 p.m. Eastern time. And you all have a good, healthy life, week, and, be successful. We can all work together and work, and achieve our goals.
100%. Thank you for having me on, Peggy. God bless you. Have
All
a
right.
wonderful.
Take care. I'll be talking to you. Thank you.
Sounds good.
Bye-bye.
This has been The Holistic Nurse with host Peggy Smith. Tune in each week where you're encouraged to send in questions and receive private responses and suggestions if appropriate. Thursdays, 1 p.m. Eastern.